Hi, it's Bee with Crafting Daily Dose, and today I have an interactive alternative for the February 2023 paper pumpkin kit called Sunshine and Smiles. I love interactive cards, and this kit is perfect for that since we have both rainy and sunny backgrounds. That allows us to literally change things up. So we can go from a scene like this and turn it into something different. Isn't that cool? I saw this mechanism in a video by Srushti Patil, and I've got that linked down below. I've adapted it so that it fits into our standard medium-sized envelopes and so that it has the look more of a regular card. There's even room for you to write a message here on the back. If you would like to learn how to make this fun card, stay tuned. Here are the supplies for the next project. Let's start with the ones that come from the kit. This is one of the card bases. Here's what it looks like on the other side. And I've cut it, obviously I cut the front off. So this is 5.5 inches by 4.25 inches. Then I used the insides of two of the cards. So this is the rainbow scene and this is the rain scene. Each one of these was cropped to 3 inches by 3 inches. I just sort of picked an area where there was a lot of pattern going on and that I liked. So first I cut it to 3 inches by 3 inches, and then I cut that in half horizontally. So each one becomes 3 inches by 1.5 inches. And you can see that I did the same thing for the rain design. So start out with 3 by 3 and then cut that in half horizontally. Remember that this kit coordinates with the Rain or Shine suite, so instead of using images from the card bases, you could use some of the pattern paper instead. Then I've got several die cuts here. I'm using the rabbit and the umbrella, 2 of the clouds, the smaller cluster of flowers, and then this sentiment label. I'm also using the raindrop embellishments. Now let's talk about the parts that I added in. I've got some basic white cardstock here. There are 2 pieces that are like this. Each one is 5.5 inches by 3 inches. And then there are 2 pieces like this one. Each one is 3 inches by 4.25 inches. Now we are going to make some additional cuts on all 4 of these pieces, but you can go ahead and get those ready and then we'll do the other cuts together. And then lastly, I have a piece of Mango Melody cardstock, although you can use white or a different color here if you prefer. It is 3 inches by 1 inches, scored at 1/2 inch. We've got our pieces and now we're ready to get started. We'll begin by cutting these 2 pieces. So these are the ones that are 5.5 inches by 3 inches, and I'm going to do one at a time. I'm going to turn it so now the short side is along the top, and the magic number that you want to remember here is 1.5. So I'm going to place this at the 1.5 inch mark right here. And then I'm going to take my cutting blade, it's this darker one, and I'm going to place it at 1.5 inches based on the measurements along the guide. So there's a little notch here on the side of the cutting blade, and I'm lining that up at 1.5 inches. Once it's where I want it to be, then I'll press down the guide. And on this first one, starting at 1.5 inches, we're going to go up. So we're cutting from here to the top. So here's what that looks like. And then I'm going to bring in my other piece. I'm going to line it up, remember, at 1.5 inches. I'm going to put the cutting blade again at 1.5 inches. But this time I'm going to cut down. So I'm going to cut all the way to the bottom, starting at 1.5 inches. So now our piece looks like this. And eventually these 2 are going to fit in with one another like so. Before we go on, let's go ahead and label them. This one that has the shorter cut, I'm going to label this as after top. This means that's where we're going to glue the top part of our after image. Now, the one that has the longer cut, I'm going to make sure that that longer cut is on my left-hand side. And over here in this corner, I'm going to say after bottom, because that's where we're going to glue the bottom half of our after image. So to recap, the short one is where the top of the image goes, and the one with the long cut is where the bottom of the image is going to go. Let's do the other two. These are the ones that are 3 inches by 4 1/4 inches. And for this one, we're going to rotate it so the long side is along the top. We're going to place it at, you guessed it, 1 1/2 inches. I'm moving my blade back into position to 1 1/2 inches. First, I'll cut up from there, so 1 1/2 inches to the top. Now the other piece, rotate it so that the long side is along the top and place it at 1 1/2 inches. Place the cutting blade at the 1 1/2 inch mark. And this time we're cutting down. So these two are going to fit together. I've just rotated them so that the short side is along the top again, and they are going to fit together like this. So let's go ahead and label these as well. For the one that has the cut on the right-hand side, this is going to be the top part of the before image. And then for the piece that has the cut on the left-hand side, this is going to be the bottom part of the before image. I've got my silicone craft sheet out for a little bit of cushion, and then I'm going to be stamping on this piece of the card base. So remember, this is what it looks like on the other side. I'm going to stamp a sun right up here. Now you could stamp it so that the bluer part is towards the top. I think either one works, but I'm going to put the white up there because that's going to help my Mango Melody color show up better. Next, I'll stamp my sentiment label. Now this is the piece that is going to serve as a handle for the part that rotates, and I'm going to make a little arrow on the top half of this. So I want to create the arrow that is going to be above that crease line. Now, of course, you can draw the arrow, but stamping is fun, and I'd like to show you different ways to use your supplies. So I have an idea for you. This is the stamp that represents the kite string, but notice how flexible it is. So that means that we can make it curve more or less depending on what we want. I'm going to give it just a slight curve, and I'm going to mount it onto my block that way, straightening it a little bit, because I want to make sure that the whole of the curve is going to fit in that little 1/2 inch space that's above the crease. And right now it looks like it does. So I'm ready to ink this up and stamp. I'm stamping with Mango Melody ink onto the same color cardstock, so you'll be able to see it, but it's subtle enough to not be a distraction. What about the arrow tip? Well, I'm going to use one of these rays from the sun. I'm choosing one of the wider ones, and I've got a little piece of washi tape here. You can also use just regular tape or masking paper, and I'm going to mask off the areas around it. And then I'm going to ink this up with just the corner of my ink pad. Just so I get that cute little triangle. After you've inked it up, don't forget to remove the washi tape or masking paper. That's important. I'm stamping that in place and then repeating for the other side. Now we're ready to prepare our images. We already have our pieces labeled, so we know where these are going to go. This is my before picture, so the rain is going to be what shows initially on the card. I want to make sure I have it aligned correctly, so this is the top and this is the bottom. And I'm going to glue them to their respective pieces. Now, I don't always do this, but for this project, it's really important that our pieces are glued down well at the edges. So I'm taking a scrap piece of cardstock that I'm going to use as a squeegee to make sure that my glue is spread evenly. So this is going to cover up this whole top part, and I want to make sure that I'm staying above that cut. I don't want to cover up that cut at all. When your glue is dry, then you can slip these together to make sure everything is fitting well. Now we'll work on the after image, and in this case, I want the rainbow to be the thing that shows after the card has been rotated. Once again, I'm checking to make sure that my pieces are lined up and I know which one is the top and which one is the bottom. I'm going to glue them on the right-hand side of these two pieces, making sure that I don't cover up that cut line. After the glue is set, I can slip these together to make sure that they fit. If you've got any overhang, you can always trim things off to make the edges tidy. Now we're ready to put everything together. So we're starting with the after image, and I'm going to go ahead and slip these in together, just like we did before when we were test fitting it. So they come together just like that. Now I'm looking at the top part of the before image, and I'm going to slide that in. I'm taking this long flap over here, and I'm going to put it through so that it's going to cover up the top of the rainbow. So it's going to go like this. Now, if you've got a lot of overhang over here, like let's say that you can see a lot of that rainbow and it's not going to be as much of a surprise, you can take these pieces apart and just trim a tiny bit off from that rainbow so that the rain piece is going to hide it. If the problem, though, is that you're not able to slide this all the way, then what you can do is to take it back out and use your snips to extend that cut just a tiny bit. Okay, now that we're at this stage, we are going to take the bottom part of our before picture. And up here at the top, I'm going to count 2 layers. So I've got my rain layer and my rainbow layer. This piece is going to slip in underneath those 2 layers. And the bottom part is going to cover the bottom part of the rainbow. So it's going to look like this. Let me do it one more time for you. So this is what we had. We're counting off 2 layers here. This piece is going to go underneath both of those layers, and then the bottom part is going to cover up the rainbow. So now it looks like this. And once these pieces are connected, we can go ahead and rotate them, and you can see that the image changes, which I think is so cool. Test it to make sure that it's working, and then we're going to put this onto the card. Here is the back of the card where I stamped the sun. This is going to be where I can write my message because this blue is light enough that you can still see whatever it is that you want to write. Now I'm going to flip this over. I like to look at it from the back first to make sure that it's not upside down. I'll place it down on my desk, and then I am going to adhere this mechanism onto my card so that it rests like this. And what I want to do is I want to put some adhesive along here. Now you can use glue like I'm going to do, you can use tear and tape, or you can use the strong version of the Stampin' Seal tape runner. You don't want to put glue over the whole thing, just this section over here, because look what happens when you rotate the card. See how this corner is going to hit part of it? You want to make sure that your adhesive is not going to interfere with that movement. So safest to only be over here in this section, maybe about an inch or so. And I'm purposely leaving this sort of at an angle just so I can make sure that I'm well clear of where that corner needs to turn. Lining this up with the corner of my card. And then I'm just using my fingers to kind of push everything together and make sure that it's the way I want it to be before that glue sets up. Now I'm going to put a little bit of adhesive on this long flap here. Again, not the whole thing, just a little bit here on the edge. Now that's looking good so far. I'm going to use that tab to connect these two pieces together down at the bottom. So here's my tab. I'm going to put glue over the whole thing. And here I want to make sure that I'm only working with this part of my mechanism. So not the card base, you should only have 2 layers in here. I'm going to line them up nicely using the edges of my fingers, and then I'm going to put this tab on top. First on the front side, you can see my arrow, and then wrapping it around to the back side. Now I want to test the mechanism again. I've got some spots where my fingers were a little bit grubby, and so I'm going to erase those areas off before finishing decorating the card. Before I arrange my decorations, I'm going to turn my mechanism part way because when I'm choosing the placement of the die cuts, I want to make sure that I don't interfere with the parts that need to move. So in particular, I have to be careful about the placement of those clouds. It's okay for the mechanism to pass over them, but I don't want to cover up the critical parts of the slit. I've shown you this before, but I'm going to trim off some of that white border around the rabbit's paw so that it looks like it's holding the umbrella without a gap between those 2 images. Remember to keep testing as you go along. And then I'm going to add my sentiment down at the bottom so that it's revealed once the mechanism has been rotated. I'll add a few raindrops, but I'm being careful not to place them where the mechanism might catch. There's our finished card. When you send this, you have room for a message on the back, and then here on the front, you have a way to make somebody's day a little bit brighter. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you've enjoyed this dose of creativity. If you get a chance to try out the project, I would love to see it, so share it in my Facebook group or tag me if you're sharing elsewhere. If you're interested in Paper Pumpkin but don't yet have a demonstrator, you can find the subscription link as well as all of my other links in the description box below. I hope to craft with you again next time, and until then, have a great day.